than taking a guy out of their own system who over the last 8 weeks has taken Baker Mayfield to new heights and making him head coach. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially if the team is going to rally around it and feel like they didn't upset the apple cart there with everything that Cleveland did near the end of the season. It seemed like their momentum was really building. Even in that last week when we said, are they going to fight through this, or was week 16 their Super Bowl? They really fought as hard as they could to even win that game in week 17. And I think that shows a lot about where they're trying to head as an organization. So for promoting a guy from within and having him have good rapport with Baker Mayfield, I think it sets the stage for potentially more good things to come for the Browns.
Yeah, I think they were definitely looking at that relationship, the fact that they got along and the fact that it didn't seem like Hugh and Baker did get along. So they're going with that chemistry play. But man, with all that this Browns team has done and what they've built, to kind of go with the guy that just got promoted to an offensive coordinator position in sort of the middle of the season. And yeah, they had some success, but it's such a small sample size. I don't know. This feels a little like a Browns type move where it almost feels like this team being so young, they sort of need some kind of veteran presence. You saw with Greg Williams. He's a guy that's been around for a long time, had some head coaching positions, hasn't always been the most successful, but certainly from a defensive side has been successful and has had success in this league. But it just feels like now you're promoting a guy into a situation where you have so much youth. Can he handle and deal with all that? And having a quarterback with as much personality as Baker Mayfield, I don't know. I think the jury's still out for me on this one. I like the fact that they went with the chemistry, but that's a risky move in my mind.
Yeah, and they even relieved Greg Williams of his duties this week, so they're really moving on.
Yeah, you could tell that was going to happen. Once he didn't get the head coaching spot and they went with the other guy, Greg Williams doesn't seem like the type of guy that's just going to sit there and play nice.
Stick around.
Yeah, they had to get him out of town. So one last piece of news that actually broke right before we started recording is a team that you follow pretty closely. The New York Jets, they make the hire and they go with Adam Gase as their next head coach. So are you surprised by that move, or do you like the move to go to Gase?
Yeah, I honestly was really surprised. I mean, it's not like Adam Gase lit the world on fire in Miami. He certainly had his problems there. I think they're looking at this again. I mean, we're seeing it kind of as a trend now with everything that's happened with Mahomes, with everything that's happened with guys that are young quarterbacks coming into the league and doing well, like a Mayfield. You're seeing a lot of the head coaching decisions be made by and around the implementation of what QB is in their system. And now I understand quarterback is a very important position on an NFL football team. But some of these hires, like a Kingsbury, like a Kitchens, and now like a Gase, they just seem so dependent on making the right move for that guy, that quarterback, or that sort of system that they want to do. And I think when you had a guy like McCarthy with all the success he had with the Packers going all in on the Jets, and they don't pick him and they go with a guy who really didn't have success in Miami, but he has more of an offensive mind, more of a, hey, can we do what like a Sean McVay's doing? You know, can we kind of sort of revolutionize the Jets offensively with Sam Darnold? That's the direction they ultimately went. And so you're not seeing some of these traditional head coaches get jobs. You're seeing some of these moves be a little bit bolder, a little bit more unpredictable. I'm not sure I'm sold on it with the Jets, but hey, if Adam Gase comes in and makes the Jets offense actually tick and score points, then I'm willing to listen because, as I said before, the last couple of weeks, I wasn't happy, although Todd Bowles was a great guy, I wasn't happy with the fact that he was a defensive guy, even replacing a guy like Rex Ryan. I just think the Jets need to go in that offensive direction, and so maybe this will work out. I sure hope it does.
So one last topic before we close out the show this week. Let's talk about the college football national title game that happened on Monday night, and it did not go the way that really it seemed like anybody thought it would as Clemson went out and just absolutely dominated Alabama. Eric, we talked about Alabama quite a bit this year, not really talked about Clemson very much. So was Alabama overrated and Clemson just overlooked, or did Alabama just have a really bad night on Monday?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think Alabama certainly had a bad night. I think if those two teams play 10 games, they might split them 5-5. I think it showed a couple of things as well, that Alabama really wasn't tested all year. We've talked about schedules. We know that a team like Notre Dame doesn't have a really hard schedule, and it's how they got to the place they got. But a team like Alabama doesn't really play a whole lot of teams that are anywhere close to the caliber that they are. And then you saw in the SEC championship game, they struggled a little bit. Then you saw Oklahoma put up a bunch of points on them late in that game. So a team like Clemson with a quarterback like Lawrence, they were going to score some points, and Alabama's defense was going to struggle, but I don't think anybody saw them struggling that much. And the other thing that really surprised me was how well Clemson's defense did. They were the team defensively that kind of took the role of Alabama. It seemed like Tua was running all over the place during that game, and Clemson was frustrating him. They were all over him the whole game. He took some real shots in that game, and Clemson offensively, they just rolled every time they had the ball. Once they got up by 2 scores and they just kept the foot on the gas, I thought, wow, this was not expected.
No, I tend to agree with you. I mean, it definitely wasn't expected. I think it was a little bit of both as well. I think, Alabama probably was a little bit overrated. But look, Clemson's schedule, they really didn't play anybody either. I mean, they started their season off with Furman. They got a 2-point win over Texas A&M. Then they played Georgia Southern. And then they got into the meat of their ACC schedule. And the ACC wasn't like it was lighting the world on fire this year with a lot of depth and a lot of teams that really could test Clemson. So their first real test, I felt, came when they played Notre Dame. And we had a lot of questions even about that team and how good they were. And did they really deserve to be there over a team like Ohio State or even Georgia? So I think Clemson didn't do themselves any favor because they didn't really play anybody out of conference to really have a test. And maybe that's their pathway because now they have 2 national titles where they don't have to go out and take a risk of getting an early season loss and putting themselves in a position to miss the playoffs, that it's more important to go in with a clean record and a clean slate and get into the playoffs and then be playing your best football. So I think it was a little bit of both. It felt like Alabama got talked up more because people think of the SEC in a higher regard than they do the ACC. But yeah, I think Clemson was a little bit of an overlooked team. But Eric, Alabama, they shot themselves in the foot as well. The pick six, the turnovers in the red zone on downs, that freaking play where they tried to run that fake field goal. I don't know what in the hell they saw in that play to make them think that was going to work. I mean, they could have had more success if you and I were the kicker and the snapper, because we would have been about as successful and gotten killed and gotten no yardage. I mean, that was just an awful play call at that point. So it really felt like Alabama did not have a good night, and Clemson just capitalized off of every single thing that Alabama did wrong. So, Eric, I know on Twitter you weren't too interested in this game because, well, we've seen a lot of Alabama and Clemson in these big matchups, either in a college football national title game or a semifinal game. But now, based on what we saw on Monday night with Trevor Lawrence coming on as a freshman, and now he'll have to play at least 2 more years for Clemson, and then Tua Tagovailoa will have 1 more year at Alabama. It seems like these 2 teams may be meeting each other 1 to 2 more times here in the future. That being said, when you see a guy like Trevor Lawrence and even Tua, as well as they're playing right now, and they can't come out, they can't enter the NFL draft. It's been talked about that Trevor Lawrence would probably be the number 1 pick in this draft because a team would trade with Arizona to jump up to get him. Should something be changed to allow players like these guys that look like, for all intents and purposes, they are ready to go, they'd be top 10 picks, that they're actually being held back and put in a position where they could get a significant injury, a serious injury that could hurt their chances to be in this position to make the kind of money that they could, to have that type of draft status? Should there be something changed, some kind of an amendment put in these situations?
I don't even think you need an amendment. We're in a free market system. The market would take care of itself. There would be young guys that try to come out and go into the draft, and they're fooling themselves. They won't get picked, but the market will take care of that. But a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who could come out and indefinitely get picked, I don't see how it's fair to stop a guy from becoming employed. If he dropped out of college and went to get a job at Walmart, he could do that. Why can't he drop out of college, go into the NFL draft, and get a job playing for the NFL? To me, it's absolutely ridiculous. And you look at a team like UCF and what they were doing with their quarterback and how one freak play totally changes his career, changes his life, even with the fact that for a while there, they weren't sure if there was going to be artery damage, if he was going to lose the bottom half of his leg. In football, you're only one play away. And so I'm just saying, for me, even if I had a kid at 19 years old who wanted to leave college and go to the NFL, if he was that talented, if the market dictated that he would be drafted and become employed by an NFL team, I don't see why anyone should stop that.
Yeah, I think this is a topic that we definitely need to come back to when we get through the Super Bowl, when the news kind of slows down a little bit, because I think there's a lot of different ways that this could be approached. Because you're right. Even look at running backs, Eric, in the NFL. They just don't have the type of shelf life where you want to see them in college be getting abused for 13, 14, potentially 15 games where they're getting 20, 25, 30 touches, and these colleges just use them, make a lot of money off of them, and then get away with just giving them a scholarship. And then these guys go to the NFL and they can barely get through their rookie deal, or they get drafted in the second or third round where they really don't make money until that contract comes up. And then you run into situations where you could be a Le'Veon Bell type of guy where you get franchised and you can't just hit that home run lottery ticket type of contract. So there's a lot of things out there that need to be changed, but I think this is one where there should be something out there. Look, I know you don't want to put 18 and 19-year-old kids, especially linemen, up against men in the NFL that they risk potentially getting injury or not being able to have success, and then all of a sudden they get cut, and then they've lost their scholarship and their eligibility, and what happens to them then? But I think in certain situations, Eric, when you have guys like Trevor Lawrence and like Tua who you are holding back, those two guys would probably be picks 1 and 2 in this draft. You're holding them back. You're hurting them. It feels like something should be done to allow them to play.
No, you're absolutely right. I think it comes down to the fact that the NCAA wants to use these guys for as long as possible, put a better product on the field, and it's really delaying their career and shortening their shelf life. So absolutely a topic that we could address more as we see what happens with these guys down the line. But that's going to do it for this episode of Talk Back. We appreciate you sticking with us for a big episode of NFL news and action. We'll hit you up next week after the NFL divisional games. We'll see who's going on to the next round. We hope you have a good week, and we'll talk back at you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of Talk Back. Staying current on sports is our #1 goal, so we drop a new episode each Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or the podcatcher of your choice. For more info about the show, to meet the hosts, or to partner with us on future episodes, please visit TalkbackFanTalk.com. We really enjoy hearing your take on the world of sports, even when you disagree. After all, this show is dedicated to you, the fans. So get direct access to us on Twitter using @TalkbackJustin and @TalkbackEric. Check out our corporate feed on Twitter and Instagram using the handle @TalkbackFanTalk. We hope you have a great week. We'll talk back at you next time.